Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here and for sticking around. I am head of our Insight team at the Financial Times based in New York. This is funky, working with a mic and an advancer at the same time. So bear with me as I get comfortable with both at the same time. We've heard an awful lot of amazing insights this morning, and I'm going to try to give you what the FT has learned from our experience selling by time, as we have been doing this for close to 16 months right now. But let me first set the stage for where we are. I think the current digital environment today is under great siege. The three big issues of the moment, namely ad fraud or invalid traffic within the industry, ad blocking or customers' resistance to seeing online advertising, and most importantly, viewability, which speaks to whether ads are even being seen. These all point to the industry's need for more quality. At the FT, we recognize these industry trends and issues and doing all we can to create solutions that address all three. We believe that quality is not just about a quality audience, which has been talked about most recently on this last panel, which the FT frankly really excels at based on our experience with reaching our audience and engagement. But the need for quality really refers to the quality advertising environments and the quality advertising opportunities that we offer our clients and the market. And that's really what I'm here to speak about today. So this has been talked about quite a bit. I guess that's a danger in being kind of late in the panel. But we all know the IAB standards for the display marketplace, and it was a great goal and a great achievement to set these standards by the IAB a few years ago. It brings some trust, transparency, and confidence to the online ecosystem, and it is a great first step, but just that, a first step in the direction for our industry. An improvement for sure from never having these standards of 1 second, 50% for display, and obviously the video standards being different. But these viewability standards that have been adopted are not the end-all be-all metrics in our view, and not a very high quality of benchmark for value, most importantly. It's just the start. So with these viewability improvements, the market is overwhelmingly focused on volume of viewable impressions, or CPMs. Viewability on its own just looks at that ad placement. Is it viewable on the user screen? It does not at all look or address the advertising performance of those ad impressions or any quality metrics such as the persuasion power of advertising and other KPIs that brands might have. So as an illustration, what you see there is a bunch of, 1,000 impressions labeled there. If someone bought those 1,000 impressions on our site or another site, all of those impressions would be treated equally in the cost to that advertiser. But as we know, and we know well from Moat Analytics and other services, those 1,000 impressions are delivered when you look at based on the time spent with each of those impressions. We can see very different things as far as attention to those impressions. We can have scenarios such as here, where you see there's some people who saw impressions for 1 second, some for 2 to 4, some 5 to 9, and some 10 or more seconds. And in this case, you see half of the impressions were seen for less than 5 seconds, and half of the impressions were seen for 5 seconds or more. And again, the market today would value all of these impressions equally, regardless of that exposure time, and the potential impact for that brand. So we at the FT had this hypothesis, and this is over 2 years ago, when we thought, hey, maybe the longer your brand advertising was in view, the greater the impact your creative would have with our audience. Not really rocket science. So we said, why don't we look into that further? We thought this really can make a difference. Now, I think this is Jonah's chart, so I apologize for lifting it. I didn't think you'd be using it today. But let's talk about what marketers really want. They don't want impressions. They want clients' attention. They want to influence their target. They want to be noticed. They want to be considered. They want to persuade their audiences. They don't really want an impression. The impression is really frankly, the currency that is used to gain that audience attention. And if we remember that, we could think differently about advertising and advertising opportunities. So in the summer of 2014, hard to believe it's almost 2 years ago, summer into the fall of 2014, the FT embarked on our digital attention economy study. Our goal was to identify how exposure time for an advertisement seen on FT.com can affect the advertiser's brand perception. We conducted 5 studies with 5 world-class brands that you'd expect to see on the Financial Times over multiple advertising categories. And again, we hypothesized that the amount of time that our audience would be exposed to that advertiser's message will have a direct effect on the advertiser's impact. So to do this, we ran 5 advertising effectiveness studies using Millward Brown as the technology and measured the impact of those ads based on the time of exposure. And the impacts we looked at were the traditional brand metrics you've probably all seen before, which is ad recall, brand awareness, brand association, and brand consideration. The results of these 5 test campaigns generated nearly 2,000 respondents with robust findings. And I'll share in a moment the lift that we saw in effectiveness for these campaigns. But before I go there, very important that I emphasize 3 key elements of the Financial Times cost per hour model. Both that we established at the experimental stage for our pilot program, as well as now that we are in market. And these are really critical, these 3 elements. The first one is site visitors to FT.com for the measurement purposes are all active users. So the technology we used and have been using has been Chartbeat and soon to be Moat. And this considers users as an active user. So as you are likely very familiar with, and we've seen in some of the Moat analytics that were on the screen earlier today, the user needs to be actively engaging on Financial Times website for the time to count. The time stops when active movement is stopped, and the active movement is measured by a variety of pixel technology, and we're looking at whether it's movement to the mouse, pressing of keys, and the like, but it must be active time. Secondly, and very importantly, we only count the ad exposure time within our CPH model, our cost per hour model, when it is in view for 5 seconds or more. So that is the minimum filter for our cost per hour model, our time-based sales model. You don't pay if the ad is seen for 1 second or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. 5 seconds or more is when the clock starts and when your time in the meter begins when you buy at our cost per hour model, which are bundles of time at thefinancialtimes.com. And thirdly, this approach to how we do things, both the active time and both the active user and the 5-second minimum exposure time, effectively what you're getting with our model is 100% viewability. There is no leaving to chance whether your ads are going to be seen on the FT.com when you buy a cost per hour model. It's 100% viewable, 4 or 5 seconds or more by every impression, and by actively engaged users. So let's get to the results. So I mentioned before there were 4 measures we looked at, measured for almost 2,000 respondents during our pilot. So here you'll see some of the brand lifts that we experienced for the campaigns we ran. This is the aggregate score for those 5 campaigns. And I'm going to note the differences in response between those who were exposed to the ad for less than 5 seconds, which here you see is that 17%, versus those who were exposed to the ad for 5 or more seconds. So this first question, do you recall seeing that brand, so insert the brand we were measuring, do you recall seeing that brand advertised on FT.com over the past few weeks? So among those who saw the ad on FT.com for less than 5 seconds, 17%, 5 seconds or more, 30%. So as you could see, ad recall increased by nearly 80% when the ad is seen for 5 seconds or more versus less than 5 seconds. Let's look at the next measure. Brand familiarity. So on the brand familiarity question, we asked, how familiar are you with this brand? And again, for all 5 brands during our pilot program. So among those who saw the ad for less than 5 seconds, the score there was at 33.8%, which is that middle bar. For those who saw it 5 seconds or more, it's 52%. So the lift here from an ad familiarity standpoint was a 55% lift when the ad was seen for 5 seconds or more versus less than 5 seconds. On the third measure we looked at, which is brand association. These are getting harder to achieve higher scores in, but you'll see the results from a percentage standpoint are still consistently the same. So we asked here, how much do you agree with this statement that this brand stands for blank, and insert that blank based on which campaign it was, whether it was a tech brand or a financial brand or the like. So when you average the brand scores together, among those who saw the brand for less than 5 seconds, that was a 23.8% brand association. And those who saw the ad for 5 seconds or greater, the score is 36%. So for brand association, our lift is 51%. So the percentage score in absolute mentions is down. The lift is still 51%, very strong. And the final question we looked at was brand consideration, the hardest, heaviest lifting attribute or score you want to measure. And here we see among those, we asked how likely are you to consider using or buying this brand. Consider using or buying the brand. So among those who saw the ad for less than 5 seconds, it was 12.4. And for those who saw the ad for more than 5 seconds, it was 19.6. So again, lift of 58% for the 5 seconds, greater than 5 versus less than 5. So this research clearly demonstrated that the length of time active users were exposed on FT.com has a meaningful effect on their brand perceptions. So in my last few moments, I'm just going to share with you a couple of additional bits which are about what we've learned and what's next. And of course, we're happy to talk to you later if you have any questions. So looking at the benefits of advertising, of buying by time in FT.com. So this is looking at the active campaigns, which we've sold over 30 since we've passed our pilot stage. We've had over 30 experiences with clients. So looking at some of the post-pilot experiences, we know that the average digital display advertisement creative, broadly, tends to have an animation length of approximately 15 seconds. Well, in the majority of cases at FT.com, if you bought a CPM campaign, so the straight-up impressions, you'd get an average of a 10-second exposure on FT.com. Other sites may have different views. So you wouldn't really have an opportunity to get that full advertising rotation from a banner, an animation of some sort, exposure with a CPM campaign. So looking historically, 10 seconds would be the average time a CPM campaign, an average time length the exposure would be. But looking at the CPH campaign, when you buy by time, you're getting an average of 19 seconds. So your advertisement can clearly go through its full rotation. So that's definitely a clear benefit that we've seen for advertisers that have bought this way. Second thing, we continue to do brand lift studies for every campaign that buys by time on the FT website. So that is part of our commitment to this program, which is we will prove that this works and the lift is there. And if we look at, this is looking at 20 CPH campaigns that we did through March. There are many campaigns that still haven't completed yet. So this data is just looking at a snapshot, 20 of the 30 plus that we've already done. So if you look at the ones we've done since the program has been live over 15 months, we can now demonstrate that the length of time a user is exposed to a campaign continues to measurably impact the brand perception of that brand. So it's not just the pilot, which is great, proved that it works, but we are seeing this now in actual live campaigns, and that's why, in fact, if you've read the media, many of the clients who have bought our CPH campaigns, our time-based campaigns, have actually come back to buy additional ones. So we're seeing a lot of renewal business by some of those clients, and I think this is the reason why. When you look at the results that I've run through mid-March, for the time buckets shown here, so less than 4 seconds, 5 to 29 seconds, and 30 to 59 seconds, we see that the 5 seconds, 29 second bucket has a 60% overall lift, and that the 30 to 59 second has nearly a 200% lift in brand performance for those campaigns. So time does matter. Finally, one thing we're working on is the ability to sequentially add serve messages for clients and advertisers based on attention time. So that advertisers will be able to move their audience and our audience, their prospective audience, down the marketing funnel and shift their messaging with new creatives as the exposure time grows for a given user they reach on FT.com. So thank you for your time and attention, and